Hey guys, tonight we're traveling back, way back, to the dusty, echoing streets of ancient Rome. It's a city bursting with bustle, brick, and body odor. And tonight, you get to spend one full day living as an everyday Roman. Right now, you're not a senator, a general, or a glamorous gladiator. Nope, you're just a regular plebeian, waking up groggy in your top floor apartment with sore feet and a mysterious draft that's probably someone else's chimney smoke. Above you, the wood-beamed ceiling creaks faintly as your upstairs neighbor stomps around like he's hosting a miniature chariot race. Somewhere outside, a rooster that clearly flunked timekeeping school starts crowing well after sunrise. The sun's first light slips through the shutter slats, painting dusty stripes across the uneven floor. You scratch your head, which is already powdered with a fine layer of windblown grit from the street 5 stories below. You take a breath and instantly regret it. That smell? It's a combination of yesterday's stew, old olive oil, and the communal latrine across the alley. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere far away or late at night, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're all tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your apartment, or insula, as the Romans call it, is about the size of a modern shipping container, but much breezier. The top floors are the cheapest because you have to climb all the stairs. 5 flights of cracked stone, no railing, and the constant threat of slipping on someone's spilled lentils. Fun! The walls are a patchwork of faded plaster, with a few hopeful vines climbing through a crack in the back window. Beside your straw-stuffed mattress is a clay oil lamp, still flickering from last night. You blew it out, but it doesn't always listen. Fire safety? Not really a thing. That's why Rome burns every few decades like clockwork. You fumble for your tunic, which doubles as your sleepwear, streetwear, and formal attire. It's wrinkled. It always is. Togas are for fancy people and funerals. You stick with the basics. Slipping it over your head, you try not to inhale the musty scent of last week's stew splashed across the hem. Before you step outside, there's one essential task. Your teeth. Sort of. Romans don't brush teeth like we do. Instead, you dip your finger into a chalky grey powder made from crushed bones, oyster shells, and a bit of charcoal. You scrub it on your teeth until your gums sting, or until the grit runs out. Historians still argue whether this actually helped or just wore everyone's enamel down into ancient nubs. Either way, you now taste like dusty campfire. There's no kitchen in your home, just a small brazier and a shelf for amphorae. Those bulky clay jugs full of olive oil, wine, or whatever mysterious liquid your neighbor bartered last night. Most Romans don't cook. Fire laws prohibit it in many upper floors, so you eat out a lot. Which is great because breakfast isn't far. You slide open the door more like a curtain with attitude and step into the stairwell. Already you hear coughing from below and the slap of someone dumping yesterday's chamber pot directly into the alley. You hug the wall as you descend, dodging buckets, children, and the occasional fleeing chicken. At one landing, a neighbor offers you a fig. It's half squished, but hey, fiber. By the time you reach street level, the sun is warm on your face and the city has already come alive. Carts clatter over worn stones, donkeys bray, and 2 men loudly debate the price of garum, that infamous fermented fish sauce Romans slap on everything from meat to melon. You try not to gag. Again, the street outside is narrow, crowded, and smells like 20 different things, none of which should be combined. There's incense from a nearby shrine, roasted barley from a street vendor, and something suspiciously like moldy cabbage wafting from a nearby sewer grate. One day Rome will revolutionize aqueducts and sanitation. Today is not that day. You pass a boy hawking rolls smeared with honey and a girl carrying a clay jug nearly her own size. No school for them. Childhood as a concept isn't quite trending yet. Speaking of which, school bells don't exist either. You'll hear about Roman schools later today, but spoiler, they involve shouting, ink stains, and very little recess. A pair of soldiers march by, clinking in their segmented armor and looking extremely overdressed for this hour. You instinctively step aside. Even though you're a free citizen, getting in the way of a centurion is a fast way to end up face first in a gutter. And you just cleaned your tunic. As you start toward the forum, passing graffiti-covered walls, yes, Romans were prolific doodlers. A beggar calls out in Latin slang too fast for you to catch. You toss him a bronze coin, more out of habit than charity. You're not rich, but you remember the temple gods always appreciate a little generosity on behalf of Fortuna, the goddess of luck. And in this city, you'll need all the luck you can get. Above, laundry flutters on rooftop lines. Below, water trickles unevenly through an open gutter, where yesterday's fruit peels now mingle with whatever that brown thing is. It's probably best not to know. You take a long breath, carefully, and steel yourself for the next stop, breakfast, or something vaguely resembling it. Breakfast in ancient Rome is underwhelming. There's no sizzling bacon, no steaming espresso, no oat milk lattes sprinkled with cinnamon. Instead, you follow the scent of something vaguely toasty toward the corner of the street, where a vendor with a scorched wooden cart and a stained linen tunic is already dishing out the Roman version of a breakfast combo. Bread, cheese, and maybe some olives if you're lucky, or look hungry enough. You trade a few copper asses, small coins, not donkeys, though there are plenty of both in the street, for a small chunk of bread. It's yesterday's loaf, dry enough to double as construction material, but at least it's warm from the brazier. The cheese is salty, hard, and suspiciously pungent. You consider asking what animal it came from, but quickly decide you're better off not knowing. Cow, goat, something with tusks. Aye. As you chew slowly, you watch people dart in and out of the crowd. Most folks eat standing up, pressed against a wall or hunched near a doorway. The idea of a breakfast table doesn't exist unless you're wealthy enough to have a dining room and a team of servants to make it tolerable. For the average Roman like you, the day starts on the move. Your neighbor Gaius waves from across the street. He's balancing a tray of boiled lentils for his cousin's stall. You slept in, he shouts, cheerful and already sweat-slicked. You wave back with your cheese hand, now sticky with brine. The concept of personal hygiene is evolving. A pack of stray dogs darts past your legs, chasing something invisible or imaginary. You're not sure. Rome has no shortage of animals, both wild and semi-domesticated. Cats, dogs, pigeons, and occasionally monkeys on leashes all share this bustling habitat. Some historians still argue whether these strays were beloved members of Roman street life or just tolerated freeloaders with fleas. Either way, you're grateful when they don't try to steal your breakfast. Now you're off in search of something stronger. Wine. Yes. Wine for breakfast. It's totally normal here. Romans don't have coffee, and while they do drink water, it's usually mixed with wine for health reasons. You stop at a popina, one of the many snack bars built into the walls of the city. These are tiny storefronts with marble counters inset with round jars, called dolia, holding everything from chickpea stew to mulled wine. The barkeep gives you a nod and pours a watered-down splash of red into a small clay cup. You sip carefully. It's sour, earthy, and faintly vinegary, but it wakes you up, kind of. You wince as you swallow, which earns you a chuckle from an old man seated nearby. Too early? It grins, revealing exactly 3 teeth. Never. You lie. There's no milk, no sugar, and definitely no croissants. Instead, You settle for a fig, slightly bruised but sweet enough to count as a treat. Romans have a strange relationship with fruit. They love it. But they're also convinced it must be cooked, dried, or soaked in honey to be safe. Fresh fruit? Suspicious. Untrustworthy. Possibly the cause of wind in the gut, which in Roman medical terms might as well be a death sentence. The bar owner's daughter wanders by, sweeping the entrance with a reed broom. She hums a little tune, something catchy that you vaguely recognize from a street performer last week. Music flows through Roman life like dust in the air, always there, a little gritty, sometimes charming. Flutes, lyres, tambourines. No orchestras yet, but plenty of amateur musicians practicing on rooftops, usually at exactly the wrong time of day. As you finish your fig, a young man in a mustard-stained tunic bursts into the bar, shouting about a chariot race scheduled for later that afternoon. He's breathless, excited, and completely unaware that half the people listening don't care unless there's free wine in. Still, he's convinced the Greens are going to take the victory, and he waves his scarf like a battle standard. Historians still argue whether these racing factions were just sports teams or proto-political cults. Either way, they inspired a lot of shouting, betting, and the occasional street brawl. You're not planning on going, your schedule's full, but it's always fun. Watching other people pretend chariot racing is noble sport and not a glorified demolition derby. Back outside, the sun's climbed higher, and the streets are now jammed with carts, vendors, and pedestrians doing that special Roman dance of almost getting run over but not quite. There are no lanes, no stop signs, and definitely no traffic laws. Just chaos, shouts, and one very determined man trying to parallel park his ox cart between two wine merchants. A woman walks by carrying a woven basket on her head, perfectly balanced. You admire her poise until a pigeon decides that moment is ideal to redecorate her tunic. She sighs. You nod sympathetically. Pigeons, the eternal enemy. You pass another insula taller than yours somehow and see laundry being lowered on a pulley system from a fourth floor window. Ingenious, if a little risky. That tunic probably took 2 months' wages to replace. Still, the city pulses with life in every crevice. Kids playing dice with uneven pebbles, an old man fixing a sandal with a fishbone, a beggar reciting poetry for coins near a shrine to Mercury. That's Rome for you. Part sewage, part sculpture. Equal parts sacred and sweaty. As you head off toward the forum, still chewing the last of your indestructible bread, you realize something both comforting and mildly horrifying. This isn't a special day. This is just life. Ordinary, chaotic, and oddly delightful in its routines. You've got a lot ahead. Baths, debates, perhaps an impromptu philosophical quarrel about whether beans cause moral decay, but for now you're fueled, vaguely clean, and only moderately wine-daisy. And marble stew of everything from temples to fast food stalls. The morning haze is just lifting, revealing fluted columns and chipped statues that gleam a little too brightly under the ambitious sun. You squint. Should have brought that hooded cloak, but you were in a hurry. Or lazy. Let's go with in a hurry. The streets funnel you into the bustle. You're shoulder to shoulder with senators in pristine white togas, freedmen hawking wares from carts, and one guy dressed as Mercury, wings and all, who may or may not be trying to get out of a debt by pretending he's a god. Everyone's got somewhere to be, even if that somewhere is just looking important, while strolling dramatically. You pass a marble platform where a small crowd has gathered. A politician in a brilliant purple-bordered toga is delivering a speech with the passion of a man who's been rehearsing in the mirror for hours. His hands slice the air. His voice booms, and he's very likely talking about grain prices or something equally thrilling. You listen for a moment. It's about grain prices, call it. Roman politics, you quickly realize, is part performance art, part actual governance and part insult comedy. It's common to have hecklers, loud rebuttals, and debates that devolve into shouting matches over who has the bigger aqueduct. Historians still argue whether the oratory at the forum was truly democratic discourse or just very theatrical elite showboating, possibly both. You sidestep a boy running past with a wooden tablet clutched in both hands, probably late to his tutor. Education in Rome isn't compulsory, but for the well-to-do, it's essential. Reading, rhetoric, and writing with a stylus on wax tablets that always seem to smudge at the worst moment. You remember your own schooling, scribbling Latin declensions until your fingers cramped, and your teacher, a retired centurion, droned on about verbs with all the excitement of a man describing oatmeal. Now you're threading through the meat of the forum. On one side is the Temple of Saturn, its columns weathered but noble. On the other, the Basilica Julia, part courthouse, part mall, part general hangout spot for bored rich people pretending to care about lawsuits. You pause to admire the sheer scale of everything. Romans don't build small. Even their benches seem designed to make you feel insignificant. You pass a money changer's stall, where a man with a neck like a barrel is weighing coins on a balance scale. He looks up and flashes you a grin that says, "I'm about to charge you double." You smile and keep walking. A little farther on, the smell of incense hits you like a perfumed fist. That's the Temple of Vesta, home of the sacred fire that must never go out. You can see two Vestal virgins gliding through the crowd like living ghosts, their ivory robes spotless despite the dusty path. People part for them, murmuring blessings under their breath. Their job, keep the flame burning. Also, remain extremely chaste. Also, avoid drama. They're kind of the spiritual janitors of Rome, but with divine consequences. You wander toward a cluster of older men playing dice near a shrine to Janus, god of doorways, transitions, and extremely confusing statues. One of the men coughs theatrically and gestures to the pile of coins in the center. "Care to try your luck?" he asks. You politely decline. Roman gambling is technically frowned upon, but wildly popular anyway. It's mostly harmless, unless you bet against the wrong patrician and end up doing his laundry for a month. The forum hums with talk of upcoming gladiatorial games, a new shipment of North African spices, and a senator's wife who apparently shaved her eyebrows as a form of protest. No one knows what she's protesting, but her look has inspired at least 3 copycats and one surprisingly stylish merchant. A man with an exotic bird on his shoulder offers fortunes in exchange for a copper coin. You pause. The bird, a green parrot with a bad attitude, picks a scroll from box with its beak and drops it into your hand. You open it. It reads, "Beware goats." Vikes. Unhelpful. You shrug and tip the man anyway. The bird squawks approvingly. Further down, you stumble into a spontaneous poetry duel. 2 young men, one in a carefully rumpled toga, the other in sandals that scream trust fund, are loudly reciting verses about unrequited love and figs. The crowd applauds ironically. Poetry here is sport, seduction, and social climbing all at once. Historians still argue whether some of Rome's greatest poets wrote for glory, passion, or simply to get invited to better dinner parties. The sun climbs higher, casting sharper shadows across the worn paving stones. You pass a vendor selling laurel wreaths woven from fresh leaves, probably for students or failed actors pretending to be Cicero. You consider buying one, but decide against it. You're already blending in well enough. Someone brushes past you carrying scrolls bound with twine. Scribi, Roman clerks, are always ferrying legal documents, tax records, and gossip disguised as public business. One drops a scroll. You hand it back. He nods but doesn't thank you. Rude. You pause to look out over the rostra, the main speaker's platform, imagining what it must feel like to stand there. voice echoing off stone, the city hanging on your every word, or pretending to, or shouting over you about olive prices. Either way, as midday creeps in, the forum begins to thin. People retreat to shaded courtyards, porticos, or lunch naps in awkward positions. You decide it's time to wander toward the baths, because in Rome, being sweaty in public is only acceptable if you're on fire. But that's a story for later. For now, you take one last glance at the chattering mosaic of people, animals, and marble monuments, and think, maybe you'll survive this day after all. Unless the goats come for you. You've been warned. You follow the scent of damp stone and eucalyptus oil toward the thermae, the public baths, which, depending on who you ask, are either the crown jewel of Roman civility or just extremely steamy social clubs. Either way, you're overdue for a scrub. As you round the corner past a vendor selling spiced chickpea fritters. Tempting, but your bath stomach is not your dinner stomach. The baths of Caracalla come into view. Towering arches, mosaics the size of small villages, and steam rising like the place is trying to fog up the entire sky. You pause for a moment to take it all in. Rome does not do subtle. Rome does behold my imported marble and weep. You step through the towering entrance and are immediately greeted by the clatter of sandals, the echo of voices, and that oddly comforting smell of warm stone and soap that clings to every crevice. A servant takes your sandals with a practiced nod. He's already judged you based on your calf definition and choice of tunic, but in a gentle way. You're handed a strigil, that curved metal scraper no Roman bathgoer leaves home without. Because soap, that's for amateurs. Real Romans exfoliate aggressively. First stop, the apoditerium, the changing room. It's a chaos of half-dressed citizens stuffing clothes into niches, arguing over who took whose tunic, and the occasional awkward eye contact that says, I'm pretending not to look, but I definitely am. You stash your belongings and wrap yourself in a towel that's seen better days but smells like lavender and judgment. Next up, the tepidarium, the warm room. It's where your body starts to relax and your pores open up like tiny Roman gates, welcoming invading steam. The room is dim, with sunlight filtering through alabaster windows and rows of reclining citizens murmuring about the latest Senate scandal, or that time Nero sang opera during a fire. Still debated, by the way. Historians aren't sure whether Nero really sang or if someone just hated his singing enough to make it legend. You lower yourself onto a bench. The seat is warm, not unpleasantly so, and the walls are lined with frescoes of nymphs doing very gymnastic things with water jugs. You try not to stare. Across from you, two men are discussing whether their neighbor's new mosaic is too realistic. One claims it gave his child nightmares. The other says that's the point. After a few minutes, you rise and move to the caldrium, the hot room. This is the Roman equivalent of walking into a volcano and staying there willingly. Your lungs protest slightly, but your skin approves. The floor, heated by the ingenious hippocaust system beneath, is so warm you shuffle instead of step. It's either soothing or very slow roast. Possibly both. There's a plunge pool too, but you're not quite ready to dive. Nearby, a bath attendant is massaging oil into a patrician's back while humming something suspiciously like Ode to a Lost Chicken. You stretch, lean back against the marble, and breathe in the steam. This is, surprisingly, relaxing. Until a conversation to your left catches your ear. They say the best olive oil comes from Hispania now. One man says. That's ridiculous, the other replies. Everyone knows it's from Campania. My cousin's vineyard swears by it. It's the Roman equivalent of arguing over coffee brands. You sip imaginary tea. Someone sneezes. Another mutters a quick prayer to Aesculapius, god of medicine. Superstition is everywhere here. Step with the wrong foot, sneeze during a deal, or drop a fig on temple steps, and the whole week might be ruined. Historians still argue whether Romans were truly devout or just extremely anxious about cosmic customer service. You finally venture to the plunge pool, a frigidarium as chilly as a senator's marriage. The water bites your skin in a deeply invigorating, slightly insulting way. You submerge quickly, resurfacing with a gasp that earns you a knowing nod from a nearby centurion who's built like a heroic statue and probably eats bricks for breakfast. A brief stop in the Laconium, the dry sauna, rounds out your circuit. Here men sweat quietly, trade business gossip, and occasionally accuse each other of watering down wine. You stay long enough to feel like a respectable raisin, then head back to the changing room, where your towel has vanished and been replaced with one slightly damp and suspiciously embroidered with chaos. You return it with a raised eyebrow. The attendant shrugs as if to say, "You get what you get." You dress slowly, still a little light-headed from the heat, and pause at a fountain near the exit where a marble cupid is eternally pouring water into a cracked basin. You splash your face. It feels like rebooting your whole brain. Outside, the city has shifted into its mid-afternoon rhythm, half napping, half plotting. You pass a baker tossing hot loaves into a basket and a perfume seller waving a vial of rose oil under your nose. It smells like spring and bad decisions. The baths were not just about hygiene, you realize. They're Rome's social glue, where politics, rumors, and exfoliation meet. Every senator, merchant, and freedman passes through them. Deals are struck here. Affairs are arranged. Friendships forged over shared sweating. You walk a little taller now. Skin fresh, toga slightly askew, feeling just a bit more Roman than before. Just as you turn the corner, a goat trots by unattended, looking directly at you with what might be smug recognition. That fortune scroll is starting to feel alarmingly prescient. You follow the goat, because, of course, you do. It disappears around a column, tail flicking with what you're almost sure is intentional sass. You hustle after it, still slightly damp from the baths, your sandals squeaking faintly with every step. The narrow alley you've wandered into smells like fermented figs and ambition. Laundry flutters above your head, strung between windows. Someone's undergarments slap you in the face like it's a duel. You nod respectfully. The city accepts your challenge. The goat is gone. In its place stands a small door beneath a fresco so faded it might once have been Hercules, or possibly someone just really into chess day. The door creaks open into a dim space that smells immediately of parchment, wax, and ink-stained disappointment. You've wandered into a tabularium, an archive. A young clerk, startled, looks up from a stack of scrolls. He's got the exhausted eyes of someone who's spent too long deciphering bad handwriting from military requisition orders. You raise a brow. He shrugs, and you realize you've stumbled into something deliciously boring. Roman bureaucracy. You slide past him into the record room. Shelves line the walls, stuffed with scrolls in every state of decay, labeled with twine and what might be the ancient world's worst penmanship. You run your fingers along the edge of one. It's a property dispute from 68 CE between two neighbors arguing over where one man's garden ends and another's goat begins. Apparently, this goat liked to sunbathe provocatively across boundary stones. The Roman legal system was comprehensive. Everything from water rights to dowries to the correct amount of time one must mourn a second cousin's passing had a statute. A widow might wait exactly 10 months before remarrying. Unless, of course, she was over 50, in which case the rules got fuzzy. Historians still argue whether that clause was law or just a bit of sarcastic commentary snuck into the digest by a tired scribe. You find another scroll. This one outlines a recipe for medicated wine, allegedly favored by Pliny the Elder for digestive troubles. It involves wormwood, crushed oyster shells, and something vaguely referred to as garden extract. You blink. Even your most experimental herbalist friend wouldn't touch this stuff with a 10-foot stylus. It probably worked though, mostly by making people afraid to get sick again. As you explore further, you overhear the clerk mumbling about census data. Roman censuses were taken regularly, not just to count people but to assess taxes, land, livestock, and how many togas a man could reasonably claim without suspicion. Citizenship wasn't just a status. It was an Excel spreadsheet come to life. One scroll, you open lists, fines levied for public indecency, which it turns out includes bathing with your sandals on and loudly cursing in the forum before noon. There's also a note about a fine for impersonating a Vestal virgin during a festival. The fine is steep, the crime ambitious. Bureaucracy for the Romans wasn't a necessary evil. It was almost a religion. Ledgers were sacred. Titles meant everything. The man who managed aqueduct flow had a longer title than the general who conquered Gaul. And the city's record keepers? Well, they might not have swords, but they had very sharp quills. You pause near a wax tablet etched with a shopping list, olive oil, 3 figs, dried garum, and a new stylus. You smile. It's easy to forget, beneath all the marble and triumph, that Rome was just a city with errands, with complaints, with people writing strongly worded letters to the magistrate because their neighbor's dog keeps barking during temple hours. Nearby, a shelf buckles under the weight of scrolls from provinces across the empire. From Britannia comes a complaint about wool tariffs. From Egypt, a letter requesting approval to restore a falcon shrine. From Numidia, a record of land gifted to a soldier after 20 years of loyal service. Land which, amusingly, seems to have already been gifted to someone else. Bureaucratic overlap, the oldest tradition in governance. Historians still debate how centralized the Roman administration truly was. Some argue it was a marvel of efficiency. Others insist it ran on bribes, naps, and the occasional half-accurate census. You suspect the truth lies somewhere in the middle, a functioning chaos, where what mattered wasn't the system's flawlessness, but its persistence. You step back from the scrolls and look around. The clerk has gone back to his work, squinting at a note pinned to a pigeon's leg. Likely incoming mail. You wonder if it's something important or just another request from a senator demanding that his house be officially recognized as the handsome villa. You slip out quietly, the door groaning as if reluctant to release you. Back in the alley, the goat has returned. It stares at you, smugly chewing something that looks like papyrus. You raise a finger, considering a lecture on the preservation of civic documents. But the goat turns and trots off. Your next stop looms ahead. The Subura. Ah yes, the Subura, the neighborhood with a reputation. Every city has one. A little gritty, always noisy, and slightly suspect after sunset. Rome's Subura is a hive of perfume sellers, dice games, philosophers yelling about stoicism while absolutely not practicing it. And markets so crowded you half expect to emerge with someone else's shoes. You take a deep breath and step in. You take 3 steps into the Subura and are immediately nearly trampled by a man pushing a cart full of pickled dormice. He apologizes by yelling something that sounds suspiciously like a compliment and an insult rolled into one. And just like that, you've officially arrived in the busiest, smelliest, and arguably most entertaining part of ancient Rome. The Subura never sleeps, even at this hour. Whatever this hour is, in this timeless nighttime walk of yours, there are people everywhere. Vendors hawk everything from eel pies to suspiciously shiny jewelry that probably fell off a senator's wife 2 streets over. A fortune teller with 5 missing teeth tries to read your palm, then your face, then just shrugs and offers you a cursed brooch. You decline politely. The buildings here lean in like gossiping neighbors. Balconies overflow with laundry, arguments, and small children dangling in ways that definitely violate modern safety codes. You pass under a banner advertising authentic Egyptian aphrodisiacs, which is either bold marketing or a terrifying misuse of papyrus. There's a musician sitting cross-legged beside a pottery stand, plucking at a lyre with all the intensity of someone who's been told they'll be fed only if they hit the right note. He's playing something mournful, though it's hard to say whether that's the tune or just the mood of his goat audience, who seems utterly unimpressed. The Subura was Rome's most densely populated district, packed with working-class citizens, immigrants, freedmen, shopkeepers, and just enough aristocrats slumming it for thrills. The streets, while not paved in gold, were certainly paved in gossip and the occasional chicken. Historians still debate the extent to which elite Romans actually interacted with the Subura's bustle. Some claim they avoided it entirely, while others suggest they occasionally snuck in, hooded and hungry for street food and scandal. You decide to take the latter view. After all, where else could one get both a haircut and questionable wine at 3 in the morning? A woman passes by carrying a tray of honey cakes. She offers you one, and well, it would be rude not to. The cake is warm, spiced with cinnamon and cloves, and delightfully sticky. You thank her, and she waves off your gratitude, muttering something about you looking like you needed it. You're not sure if she means nourishment or a moment of joy, but either way, she's right. You pause at a corner stall run by a man claiming to sell the most accurate gossip scrolls in the Subura. They're basically handwritten tabloids, chronicling affairs, scandals, and who's been seen sneaking out of whose atrium in the pre-dawn hours. One scroll accuses a senator's nephew of marrying his own reflection. You'd scoff. But honestly, have you met Roman nobility? Behind the vendor, a graffiti-covered wall demands your attention. Carved into the plaster are love notes, crude drawings, philosophical questions, and one exceptionally detailed depiction of a man slipping on a grape. Some of these have survived to modern times, scribbled across Pompeii's ruins and other Roman walls, evidence that humans have always loved a good doodle and a public complaint. You recognize a phrase scratched near the bottom. Lucius was here. He still owes me money. It's dated last month. You're not sure whether to be impressed or deeply concerned. Next, you weave through a narrow alley where incense wafts from a tiny shrine to Mercury. Coins sparkle in the dim candlelight, offerings from merchants hoping for luck, or at least less theft. Roman religion, here in the Subura, feels more intimate. Less marble grandeur, more everyday hope. A drunk poet slumps nearby, muttering verse to a dog. The dog looks offended. You tiptoe past. The Subura had its dark side too, of course. Fires were a constant risk thanks to tightly packed wooden structures and cooking fires left unattended. Thieves prowled the shadows. And if you listened closely, you could hear the whispered schemes of petty politics, blackmail, and the occasional back alley deal involving grain quotas and very sharp knives. Still, the neighborhood pulsed with life. This was Rome's heartbeat. The elite might hold the power, but the Subura held the stories, the unvarnished kind, messy and vibrant. Here, ambition met desperation, and sometimes they went out for drinks. You stop at a fountain. Its lion's head spout trickling water into a chipped marble basin. A boy splashes his face, then offers you a drink from a shared ladle. You hesitate, but accept. The water is cold and metallic, a welcome contrast to the heat that clings to your skin like a second tunic. Behind you, a heated argument erupts between two vendors over the rightful ownership of a particularly round melon. It ends with an agreement to split it and a shared laugh. That's the Subura. Tempers flare, but no one stays mad long. Not when the next customer might be your cousin, your rival, or both. One last stall catches your eye, a bookseller offering used scrolls at half price. You sift through them. There's a love poem allegedly penned by Catullus, likely fake, a military speech from a minor campaign in Gaul, and a detailed guide to making cheese using techniques from Crete. Naturally, you take the cheese scroll. You tuck it under your arm as you turn down a quieter side street. The noise fades a little here, just enough to let you hear the soft trill of a night bird and the rhythmic clop of hoofs in the distance. Someone's delivering goods by mule under moonlight. Even in the Subura, life finds a way to settle, however briefly. As you round the corner, the street opens up into a courtyard lit by hanging oil lamps. A small group is gathered, listening to an elderly woman recite a myth about Aeneas and a sea monster that might have just been a big eel. Children lean against their mothers, half asleep. A cat curls in a lap. You stay at the edge, letting the calm soak into your bones. The Subura's chaos is never far. But for now, you've found its soft underbelly. Tomorrow, it will be loud again. Tomorrow, the politics and pickpockets and passionate poets will return. But tonight, it breathes. Slow, uneven, alive. You leave the courtyard quietly, letting the last strains of the old woman's tale echo behind you like the end of a lullaby. Your feet carry you deeper into Rome, away from the cramped chaos of the Subura and toward the beating marble heart of the city. The Forum. But first, there's the awkward matter of getting there. Because you, my friend, are lost. The streets twist in ways no map, ancient or modern, can quite predict. You turn left when you meant to turn right. Pass a statue that looks suspiciously like it's following you with its eyes, and end up in a street where every single door is painted red. You don't ask questions. You just keep walking. Eventually, you stumble upon a familiar sight. The towering columns of a basilica outlined in moonlight, ghost pale against the sky. The Forum is near, and with it, the temples, the courts, the public speeches, and the pigeons that have absolutely no sense of historical reverence. You reach the edge of the Forum Romanum just as a cool breeze picks up. The stones beneath your sandals are worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. You imagine senators, lawyers, thieves, and market women all pacing the same stretch, grumbling about taxes or the price of anchovies. Anchovy complaints you suspect are eternal. To your left, the Temple of Saturn stands tall, its columns fluted and severe, like a teacher who knows exactly what you did wrong. Saturn, god of time and agriculture, was once honored here with great festivals, including Saturnalia, a holiday that involved gift-giving, role reversals, and a healthy amount of partying. Basically, Roman Christmas with fewer sweaters and more wine. Historians still argue whether Saturnalia had deeper political undertones or if it was simply an excuse to let loose. Either way, it was one of the few times when slaves could mock their masters without immediate consequences, which probably made for some interesting breakfast conversations the next day. Next, you approach the rostra, the speaker's platform where orators would stand and try to sound intelligent while waving their arms like very enthusiastic windmills. Cicero once addressed the crowds from here. So did Mark Antony, most famously after Caesar's assassination. You imagine standing there yourself, dramatically adjusting your toga and beginning with, "Friends, Romans, countrymen." Still, the silence of the Forum at night is anything but empty. It hums with memory. To your right is the Curia Julia, the Senate House, rebuilt multiple times thanks to fires, riots, and the occasional inconvenient dictator. It's more squat than grand, but still imposing. Inside, senators once debated everything from war and taxation to whether or not to install more public toilets. That last one might be apocryphal, but a dreamer can dream. The Senate wasn't exactly a model of functional democracy. It was more like a boys' club with expensive sandals, where family influence and bribery held more weight than actual policy ideas. And yet, somehow, Out of this chaos came structures and debates that still influence governments today. It's both inspiring and a little terrifying. Further on, you stop before the Arch of Septimius Severus. Its carvings depict in military victories with all the subtlety of an action movie poster. Chariots, weapons, conquered cities. It's a very theatrical, look what I did monument. Romans loved commemorating stuff in stone. If you sneezed impressively in battle, chances are someone would put it on a frieze. A shadow flickers behind a column, and you freeze for just a moment, before realizing it's only a stray dog, tail wagging hopefully. You break off a bit of your honey cake from earlier and offer it. The dog accepts with the dignity of a senator and promptly vanishes again into the shadows. You pass beneath the arch and onto the Via Sacra, the sacred road, which once hosted triumphant parades for returning generals. Picture it, flowers tossed from balconies, musicians blaring horns, and an entire army marching behind a man in a purple toga pretending not to grin. Meanwhile, a slave would whisper in his ear, "Remember, you are mortal," which, to be honest, is exactly the kind of vibe we need in group chats today. One of those generals was Vespasian, later emperor and inventor of the public urinal tax. That's right. In ancient Rome, there was a tax on using the bathroom. When criticized, Vespasian allegedly held up a coin and asked whether the money smelled. Pecunia non olet, he said. Money doesn't stink, even when it comes from pee. Historians still debate whether this exchange actually happened or was a later anecdote to reinforce his famously practical, no-nonsense personality. Either way, it's pure Vespasian energy. You make a mental note to be less embarrassed about weird revenue streams in your own life. You finally reach the Temple of Vesta. Small, round, and guarded by a soft golden glow from an eternal flame. The Vestal Virgins, Rome's most secret priestesses, tended this fire day and night. Their job was to keep it burning, for the flame symbolized Rome's stability. No pressure or anything. The Vestals were powerful women, respected and feared. They had privileges few Roman women did. Front row seats at games, their own transport, and the authority to pardon prisoners. But one mistake, one broken vow of chastity, and it was a burial alive situation. Very HR needs to calm down levels of workplace discipline. Even now, in the hush of night, you can feel the weight of that fire. Though it's long extinguished, the idea still burns that something so intangible as loyalty and tradition could be embodied by a flame. Fragile, flickering, and fiercely defended. As you move past the temple, you notice an inscription barely legible on a nearby plinth. It reads something like, "For the good of the Roman people." It's half crumbled and crooked, and you can't help but smile, because in its own way that sums up Rome perfectly. Ambitious, performative, a little cracked, but always trying to hold itself together. You sit for a moment on the steps of the basilica. The forum stretches out before you in moonlight, empty yet alive with echoes. You think of the deal struck, the speeches shouted, the feet that pounded these stones. Somewhere out there, the Subura still hums. Someone's burning chestnuts over a fire, and the fortune teller is probably selling cursed brooches to a visiting Gaul. You stretch your legs. There's more city ahead, more stories, more strange gods, more alleyways that definitely lead somewhere important. But for now, the forum holds you still, tucked beneath its colonnades and its stars. You stand slowly, your legs humming with that particular ache that only comes from wandering through 2 millennia of history in one night. The forum falls behind you, a nest of stories wrapped in marble and memory. As you wind your way eastward toward one of Rome's more curious institutions, its public bathhouses. The night is cooler now. You pass under balconies hung with drying laundry, through quiet courtyards where cats blink lazily from under mosaic fountains. The scent of warm stone and crushed herbs lingers in the air, as if someone nearby is steeping chamomile for reasons that are probably more medicinal than relaxing. Eventually, the great shadow of the baths of Caracalla looms before you. They're massive. Even in ruins, they are impossible to miss. Towering brick walls, crumbled vaults, and marble fragments lie scattered like a half-forgotten board game played by giants. Once, this place could hold over 1,500 bathers at a time. That's right, 1,500 people sweating, chatting, scrubbing, and awkwardly trying to avoid eye contact in a single space. It's like a gym locker room times infinity. As you step through what was once the grown entrance, the air shifts. Even now, you can feel the echo of heat, the ghost of water against tile. The Romans took their hygiene seriously, or at least their rituals around it. You could spend an entire day here, starting in the frigidarium, cold room, moving to the tepidarium, warm room, and finally basking in the steamy glory of the caldarium, hot room. It was less poppin' for a rinse and more spa day meets social club meets semi-nude philosophical debate circle. You imagine yourself disrobing in a crowded apoditerium, your belongings stored in a cubby guarded by a young attendant who's far too bored to stop any theft. Historians still argue whether bathhouse theft was as rampant as satirical poets claimed, or if people were just particularly dramatic about losing their sandals. The baths weren't just for bathing. Oh no, these were multifunctional pleasure palaces. Picture indoor pools, massage rooms, libraries, lecture halls, and even snack stalls. You could get exfoliated, listen to Cicero quotes, and enjoy some honey-drenched pastries, all in one visit. You know, the essentials. As you stroll through the cavernous remains of the caldarium, you try to picture the steam rising thick and sweet, filling the domed ceiling above. Men would sit on heated marble benches, sweating out sins and gossip. Senators, freedmen, gladiators, even the odd visiting dignitary. Everyone stripped to the same humanity under the heat. The only thing separating a consul from a cobbler was whether their towel was monogrammed. And speaking of towels, no, they didn't use loofahs. Instead, they used strigils, curved metal scrapers for oil and grime. After coating your body in olive oil, great moisturizer, questionable scent, an attendant would scrape it off, ideally removing dirt and dead skin with it. It's exfoliation, Roman style. Just don't flinch when the blade catches. You pause beside a section of mosaic flooring. What's left of a dolphin leaping through waves, its tail lost to time. Even in bathhouses, art thrived. The Romans couldn't resist decorating. They'd tile a fish into a steam room or carve a heroic bust just for the locker area. Practical? Debatable. Fabulous? Absolutely. And like everything Roman, the bathhouses were political. Caracalla himself commissioned these massive baths not out of altruism, but to curry favor with the masses after, a series of not-so-popular assassinations. Building a hot tub the size of a stadium was his way of saying, let's forget about that whole military purge thing. You imagine a typical conversation drifting through the warm air. So, did you hear about Lucius? Lucius the baker? No, Lucius the senator's nephew. Got caught bribing a magistrate again. Shocking. Pass the olive oil. And somewhere in the distance, a philosopher is rambling about stoicism to a guy who just wants to finish his sausage roll. Beyond the steamy socializing, the baths also offered an odd sense of equality. Everyone came here. Sure, the richest had private baths at home, but even emperors liked to show up at public ones now and then, just to be seen sweating like everybody else. Marcus Aurelius supposedly enjoyed a good soak while contemplating the universe. You can almost hear him now. The obstacle is the way, unless it's athlete's foot, in which case, get that checked. But not everyone approved. Some conservative Romans thought bathhouses encouraged laziness, vanity, and, shockingly, frivolity. Pliny the Elder, who was basically the neighborhood dad yelling at clouds, warned against overbathing. Too many long soaks, he wrote, weaken the soul. This from a man who once catalogued the medicinal uses of snail slime. So grain of salt. You wander into the palestra next. The open-air gymnasium. Weights lie strewn in your imagination, alongside a few puffing men practicing boxing or wrestling, both of which looked more like chaotic bear hugging than anything resembling Olympic technique. You give them a wide berth. Suddenly, a dog barks. Not a real one this time, but a carving along the edge of a low wall. The inscription reads, Kahav Kanem, beware of the dog. It's probably just a leftover tile from someone's idea of a joke, but you take it seriously anyway. You remember that stray pup from the forum. Maybe he has a cousin here. The baths begin to empty in your mind now, like the last guests drifting out of a party. You follow their footsteps across faded tiles and broken columns out into the open air again. The night has deepened. Its stars spread like flecks of mica across the heavens. You take one last look back at the crumbled grandeur of Caracalla's dream, once filled with echoing laughter, splashing water, and philosophical rants about fate. It now rests in moonlight, quiet but not silent, because places like these remember you. Even long after the Strigils have rusted and the olive oil's gone rancid, the warmth of bodies and breath, of chatter and steam, still clings faintly to the air. And as you turn your feet toward the Aventine Hill, you wonder if tomorrow will hold another soak. Probably not. But you've got the scent of crushed time, marble dust, still lingering in your hair. The gentle slope of the Aventine Hill greets you now, a quieter refuge from the restless hum of the city below. The night air here is cooler, filled with the scent of pine and the distant murmur of the Tiber flowing past ancient stone bridges, its waters carrying secrets as old as the city itself. You pause near the Basilica of Santa Sabina, a structure that will one day be crowned with Christian significance. But tonight, you see it simply as a collection of shadows and the soft rustling of olive trees. This hill has long been a retreat for Rome's more contemplative souls, priests, philosophers, and those who appreciate a good view without the headache of a crowded market. You take a breath and let your eyes wander to the Palatine Hill across the river, where emperors once built their palaces like giant bird nests atop the city. Your mind drifts to Augustus, Rome's first emperor, who turned the chaotic republic into a glittering empire with a mix of iron will and clever PR. He famously claimed he found Rome a city of bricks and left it a city of marble. You imagine him overseeing construction sites, probably with a very long scroll of building plans and a growing headache. Historians still argue whether Augustus was truly the benevolent founder of peace he styled himself as, or if his reign was just a masterclass in political spin. Maybe it was both, because history loves complicated characters, especially ones who build statues of themselves so big they cast literal shadows over centuries. The Aventine also holds one of Rome's quirkiest treasures, the keyhole of the Priory of the Knights of Malta. Looking through it, centuries from now, you'd see a perfectly framed view of St. Peter's Basilica, which feels like an ancient secret passed down in whispers. For now, though, the keyhole is just a sliver of darkness beneath your fingers, and the quiet street is lined with orange trees whose fruits smell faintly of sunshine and promises. You wander onward toward the ancient Jewish ghetto, established centuries later, but rooted in layers of history you can feel pressing beneath your feet. The idea of a community thriving amidst restrictions and challenges makes you think about resilience. how life always finds a way to bubble up, even in the most unlikely places. Roman Jews, much like others in the empire, found ways to maintain traditions, bake their special breads, and celebrate holidays while navigating the strictures imposed by authorities. You imagine the scent of freshly baked challah, mixing with the more familiar aroma of Roman herbs. It's a reminder that beneath the grandeur of emperors and temples, daily life pulsed with ordinary people. Shopkeepers, children chasing dogs, women gossiping over laundry lines. You round a corner and find yourself in front of a small, unassuming building with thick walls and barred windows, the Theatre of Martius. By day, it was a hub for plays and performances. By night, you picture it echoing with laughter and the muffled footsteps of performers sneaking out after late shows. This theatre, built by Julius Caesar's nephew, reminds you that entertainment was never far from politics in Rome. Plays could be sharp political commentary or light-hearted farce. Sometimes, the audience jeered their own senators from the balconies, a form of ancient crowdsourced accountability. Historians still argue whether these performances truly influenced public opinion or were just a form of escapism. Either way, it's hard not to think that even ancient Romans appreciated a good joke, especially one at someone else's expense. Nearby, a group of nocturnal birds takes flight, their silhouettes flickering against the sky like pages torn from an old storybook. You listen to the gentle rustling of leaves and distant city sounds. Horses' hooves clopping on cobblestones, the murmur of an insomniac vendor packing up for the night. You feel a sense of calm settling in, the kind that comes from walking with ghosts, those echoes of laughter, debate, prayer, and the endless ebb and flow of human lives. As you prepare to descend the hill toward the quieter neighborhoods where Rome's artisans and gardeners live, you carry with you a patchwork of images: grand emperors, humble bakers, bathhouse chatter, and the scent of orange blossoms in the night. Each step feels lighter, as if the city itself is settling down for sleep and you're part of that slow, breathing rhythm. There's more to explore, more stories waiting just around the corner. But for now, the Aventine offers you a moment of peace, an invitation to rest, to dream, and to remember that history isn't just in books. It's beneath your feet, in the air you breathe, and in the quiet pulse of a city that never truly sleeps. As you drift down from the Aventine, the streets grow narrower and quieter, winding like lazy rivers through the heart of Rome's ancient neighborhoods. You find yourself stepping softly over uneven cobblestones, worn smooth by centuries of sandals, hooves, and bare feet. The soft glow of oil lamps flickers in doorways, casting playful shadows that dance just beyond reach, teasing your imagination with the promise of stories yet untold. Your path leads to the Jewish ghetto, a place layered in history, resilience, and everyday life. You inhale deeply, catching the faint, comforting aroma of freshly baked bread mingling with the earthiness of rain-soaked stone. This neighborhood, officially established by imperial decree centuries from now, hums quietly tonight, its narrow alleys steeped in the rhythms of its inhabitants' routines. You picture a baker pulling golden challah loaves from a wood-fired oven, their crusts crackling softly as they cool on a wooden bench. Nearby, children chase each other, their laughter a melody that threads through the night air, blending with the occasional clink of a pot or the murmur of conversation behind curtained windows. It's a humble scene, far removed from the grandeur of temples and triumphal arches, but rich in the texture of human life. Historians still debate how tightly knit the community truly was, or whether daily life was more fractured and complicated beneath the surface. Either way, the spirit of perseverance glows softly like a candle in the night, You continue, passing a small shrine tucked between two buildings. An old faded mosaic depicting a menorah. It's a quiet testament to faith surviving through centuries of change. You imagine the generations who paused here to offer a whispered prayer or a hopeful glance skyward. Despite the trials the city has seen, nearby a street vendor quietly packs up his stall, the scent of spiced nuts and dried fruit lingering faintly, a reminder of simpler pleasures in a complicated world. You imagine the barter and trade that must have occurred here. Coins exchanged for treats, stories swapped over shared meals, and the quiet comfort of familiar faces. Your footsteps lead you toward the banks of the Tiber River, where the water glistens under a sky sprinkled with stars. The river's gentle murmur blends with the rustling leaves and distant sounds of a city slowly settling into sleep. Along the riverbank, you imagine a fisherman casting nets into the cool water, their movements rhythmic and patient. A quiet dance between man and nature. The fish slip silently beneath the surface, unaware of the ancient city watching over them. You pause to breathe in the cool night air, the scent of moss and wet stone grounding you in the moment. It's easy to forget sometimes that this bustling metropolis has always been intertwined with nature's quiet presence, a constant companion through empire and decline. As you stand there, the reflections of flickering lanterns ripple softly across the water, and you feel a gentle pull toward the quieter corners of the city, where everyday life continues in soft whispers and slow rhythms. And so you wander onward, the stories of Rome's people wrapping around you like a warm cloak, guiding you gently deeper into the night's embrace. The path now leads you to the edge of the Forum Romanum, that ancient heart of Roman public life where once the bustle of orators, merchants, and senators filled every inch of space. But tonight, the ruins lie bathed in the soft glow of moonlight, quiet and unassuming, like an old storyteller settling down to whisper in your ear. You step carefully between broken columns and cracked pavements, feeling the weight of centuries pressing lightly on your shoulders. It's easy to imagine the forum in its prime, the chatter of citizens debating laws, the clang of blacksmiths' hammers nearby, the smell of fresh bread wafting from bakeries, mingling with the less pleasant odor of crowded streets. One particularly curious detail catches your attention. Ancient graffiti etched onto a weathered stone. It's a crude drawing of a gladiator and a message scrawled in Latin. You smile to yourself, realizing that even in a city famous for its grandeur, everyday people couldn't resist leaving behind a little cheeky signature, a reminder that history has always had a bit of humor beneath the surface. Historians still argue whether these graffiti were meant as political commentary, private jokes, or simply the boredom of citizens waiting for another public speech. Whatever the truth, it's a lovely thought that people long ago enjoyed a little mischief in their public spaces, just like you might today. Nearby, you spot the remains of the rostra, the speaker's platform where orators address the masses. You imagine the air thick with the energy of persuasive voices, speeches that could sway the crowd or spark heated debate. It's a bit like being at a modern political rally, but with fewer microphones and more togas. You pause, letting the silence wrap around you like a soft blanket, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl. The forum's stones seem to hum with stories of power, ambition, and the countless small moments that made Rome tick. Further along, you come across the Temple of Festa, its circular shape glowing softly in the moonlight. Inside, the sacred fire was tended by the Vestal virgins, priestesses sworn to maintain the eternal flame, symbolizing the city's enduring spirit. The idea of a fire burning day and night, watched over by devoted guardians, feels oddly comforting in this quiet hour. You wonder about the daily lives of those Vestal virgins, their rituals and routines, their unusual status in Roman society. Historians still debate the full extent of their influence, whether they were simply religious caretakers or held significant political sway behind the scenes. Walking away from the temple, you notice the faint scent of burning wood and dried herbs, reminiscent of ancient ceremonies. It blends with the cool night air, grounding you in the sensory details of a world long gone but not forgotten. As you exit the forum air, the gentle sounds of a distant flute drift toward you, faint and melodic. It's a reminder that even amidst ruins and history, life's simple pleasures, music, laughter, the comfort of community have always been part of the human story. You step onto a quieter street, your footsteps soft against the stone, ready to follow the next thread of Rome's vast tapestry. As the night deepens around, you find yourself wandering toward the Campus Martius, once a sprawling open field outside the city walls that gradually became a hub for leisure, politics, and even military training. Tonight, the space feels like a vast, tranquil park, the grass whispering under a gentle breeze as you walk slowly, savoring the calm. Under the moonlight, you imagine Roman citizens strolling here, chatting quietly about the latest news, or perhaps debating philosophy with that signature Roman flair for argument. Always polite, but never dull. Nearby, you can almost hear the distant clang of wooden swords from young men practicing for battle, their shouts and laughter blending into the night. One intriguing fact about the Campus Martius is that it was home to some of Rome's earliest public baths and theaters, places where people came not just to clean themselves, but to socialize and relax. You can almost smell the mixture of oils, sweat, and fragrant herbs that filled the air in these bustling communal spaces. Interestingly, there was also a peculiar tradition here, the naumachia, or staged naval battles, flooded arenas where thousands watched pretend sea fights. While historians still argue about the exact scale and logistics of these spectacles, there's no denying they were an impressive and slightly extravagant form of entertainment. Your footsteps carry you toward the Pantheon's distant silhouette, its great dome resting serenely against the night sky. You think about its mysterious oculus, the round opening at the top that lets in moonlight and rain alike, connecting the heavens and the earth in one simple architectural gesture. The Pantheon, originally a temple to all gods, later became a Christian church preserving its structure in a city where many ancient buildings were lost or transformed. It's a reminder of Rome's layered history, where beliefs and functions change, but the stones remain steady. You pause near a small fountain, its water gently bubbling in the silence. Roman fountains were not only practical, but also beautifully decorated, often featuring mythological creatures like dolphins or lions. You recall reading about the water systems, an engineering marvel involving aqueducts that brought freshwater miles into the city, a luxury few ancient cities could boast. As you sip from the cool fountain, you notice a small statue of a she-wolf nursing twin infants nearby, Romulus and Remus, the legendary founders of Rome. The myth is familiar, but the story behind it is shrouded in mystery. Historians still debate whether Romulus was a real figure or a symbol created to unite the city's people. The legend's gentle cruelty, Romulus eventually killing his brother to become king, feels like a bedtime story with a darker edge, but one that also teaches about the complexities of leadership and family. You continue on, feeling the rhythm of the city slow even further. The hum of modern life fades, replaced by the soft sounds of night creatures and the whisper of the wind through ancient trees. Here, in the Campus Martius, Past and present gently fold into one another. The night invites you to rest, to dream, and to carry these quiet stories in your heart, knowing that tomorrow will bring new tales and gentle surprises. The soft murmur of the Tiber River calls you again, drawing you toward the Trastevere district, a neighborhood that once existed on the city's fringes, a place where everyday Romans, immigrants, and artisans lived side by side. The cobblestones here are smoother, worn down by centuries of footsteps, and the narrow streets curve whimsically, inviting you to wander without a map or plan. As you stroll, the scent of fresh herbs and baked goods drifts from open windows. You imagine the humble kitchens behind those walls, where women and men prepare meals with care, using recipes passed down through generations, some unchanged since ancient times. Trastevere was known for its lively but relaxed atmosphere, a stark contrast to the formal grandeur of the city center. You picture fishermen unloading their catch at the docks, the occasional call of a market vendor selling olives or cheeses, and children playing games with simple wooden toys. One curious custom from this area was the thermopolium, ancient Roman fast food stands, where hungry patrons could grab a quick bite. It's easy to picture yourself settling at one, ordering a bowl of pulse, a kind of porridge made from spelt and legumes, while chatting with neighbors about the day's news or the latest gossip. Historians still debate the role of these fast food stalls in Roman society. Were they merely practical eateries for the working class? Or did they serve as important social hubs where community bonds were forged? As night deepens, the warm glow of oil lamps flickers on walls covered in faded frescoes and graffiti. Some inscriptions surprisingly playful, even rude, offering a glimpse of the everyday humor and candid voices of long-gone residents. You pass a small shrine dedicated to local saints, where offerings of flowers and coins have been left, connecting past and present in a quiet ritual of remembrance. The river itself moves steadily nearby, its gentle lapping a soothing soundtrack for your thoughts. You imagine the ancient barges that once floated down the Tiber, carrying goods from faraway provinces, wine from Gaul, spices from the east, and perhaps even silk woven from the mysterious silkworms of distant lands. Trade routes like these helped knit the empire together, and their stories ripple beneath the surface, whispering secrets of wealth, culture, and connection. You pause on a small bridge, gazing out over the dark water, reflecting on how this vibrant neighborhood survived invasions, fires, and the relentless march of time. Its spirit is one of resilience and community, a perfect lullaby for your journey. With the night air cool against your skin and the soft sounds of Trastevere fading behind you, you prepare to drift further into the gentle embrace of Rome's endless stories. Moving away from the vibrant life of Trastevere, your footsteps lead you into the quieter expanse of the Appian Way, one of the oldest and most famous roads of ancient Rome. Laid out in the early days of the Republic, this stone-paved artery once connected the city to the distant southern regions of Italy, carrying travelers, merchants, and soldiers on their slow journeys. The moonlight catches the uneven surface of the cobblestones, worn smooth by centuries of wheels and feet, and you imagine the steady clip-clop of horses' hooves and the soft murmur of conversation along the road. The scent of wild herbs, rosemary, thyme, and lavender rises gently from the roadside, mingling with the earthiness of the soil. The Appian Way wasn't just a thoroughfare, it was lined with tombs, mausoleums, and memorials, silent witnesses to the lives of those who once walked these lands. You find yourself pausing at a small weathered stone carved with an inscription almost faded away by time. It's a reminder that in ancient Rome, death was not just feared but commemorated through elaborate rituals and monuments. One fascinating detail is that some of these tombs included niches where family members could leave offerings or tokens, a practice thought to help keep the memory of loved ones alive. Historians still debate whether these customs were primarily spiritual or served a more social function, reinforcing family prestige in the community. You stroll further, passing a quiet farmhouse nestled among olive trees, where farmers long ago would have tended their crops under the Mediterranean sun. The simplicity of rural life offers a sharp contrast to the city's busy streets. Yet both worlds were deeply connected through trade and tradition. Nearby, a small chapel catches your eye, its faded frescoes hinting at stories of saints and pilgrims who once sought solace here. The merging of pagan and Christian traditions along this road reflects Rome's evolving spiritual landscape, a gentle blending rather than abrupt change. The peaceful night air carries the faint sound of cicadas, their rhythmic chirping a natural lullaby. You close your eyes briefly, imagining the road stretching endlessly into the distance, a silent witness to the hopes, fears, and daily rhythms of countless travelers. The Appian Way reminds you that every path, no matter how old or worn, is part of a larger journey, just like your own slow stroll through Rome's timeless stories. Your feet carry you onward to the quiet majesty of the baths of Caracalla, sprawling ruins that once housed one of ancient Rome's grandest public bathing complexes. Tonight, the stone walls stand tall against the night sky, softened by the gentle rustling of nearby cypress trees and the faint scent of wildflowers growing through the cracks. You imagine the baths in their heyday, steam rising from vast pools, the low murmur of voices mingling with the splash of water, and the faint sound of sandals shuffling across marble floors. Roman baths weren't just about cleanliness. They were social centers, places to relax, exercise, and catch up on the latest news, all wrapped in a luxurious atmosphere. One quirky detail is the use of the Strigil, a curved metal tool that bathers use to scrape dirt and sweat off their skin, sometimes with the help of oils or perfumes. It's a strange little ritual, and you can't help but picture someone awkwardly wrestling with their strigil, perhaps dropping it into the water with a small splash. Historians still argue about the full extent of the bath's social role. Were they mostly for leisure? Or did they serve as political gathering places where alliances were forged and deals whispered in steamy corners? As you wander through the ruins, you spot the remains of mosaics featuring sea creatures and mythical gods, colorful details that once brightened the marble interiors. These artistic touches remind you of Rome's love for storytelling, even in its architecture. Nearby, you find a small room once used for massages, lined with stone benches and niches. You imagine weary visitors reclining here after a long day, muscles relaxed, minds drifting towards sleep. It's a soothing thought, knowing that ancient Romans had their own ways to unwind and find calm amid the bustle of city life. Outside the baths, you notice a faint trail of crushed olive leaves, evidence of a festival long past where locals would celebrate with food, music, and dance. The scents and sounds may be gone, but the spirit of communal joy lingers, wrapped in the night air. You take a deep breath, letting the stillness and history fill you with a sense of peace. The baths of Caracalla stand as a testament to Rome's ability to blend grandeur and everyday comfort. A perfect place to rest your thoughts before continuing your gentle journey through the city's stories. You wander next toward the ancient Forum Boarium, the bustling cattle market nestled along the Tiber's curve. Though now quiet under the stars, you can almost hear the low murmur of traders bartering over oxen and sheep, the occasional bleat or grunt punctuating the air. The smell of hay mingled with the river's cool mist creates a strangely comforting aroma, like a barn on a crisp autumn morning. The Forum Boarium was one of Rome's oldest commercial hubs, a place where the daily rhythms of work and trade intertwined with the sacred. The temple of Hercules Victor standing proudly nearby, its circular marble columns illuminated softly by moonlight. It's the oldest surviving marble building in Rome, and you imagine the awe it inspired, its smooth stones glowing in the early dawn light when worshippers would come to offer thanks. Interestingly, this marketplace was also a social melting pot, where merchants from across the Mediterranean mingled and exchanged stories, goods, and sometimes even gossip. One quirky detail: vendors sometimes used live animals as collateral for debts, a practice that sounds risky if you are not a fan of borrowing a sheep to pay your baker. Historians still debate whether the Forum Boarium's role was mostly practical or if it also served as a cultural crossroads, helping to spread ideas and customs throughout the growing city. As you stroll past the ancient arches, you catch sight of the Cloaca Maxima, the enormous sewer system that drained the city's wastewater into the Tiber. It's a reminder that beneath Rome's grand monuments and daily bustle lay a complex infrastructure, both fascinating and slightly less glamorous. You pause beside a small shrine to Portunus, the god of harbors and quays, whose statue watches quietly over the market's history. This tiny sanctuary whispers of the Romans' deep connection to their waterways, crucial for trade and travel. The night is cool and calm now. The only sounds the gentle lapping of the river and your footsteps echoing softly. In this space between commerce and worship, you sense a rhythm as old as the city itself, one that has gently carried countless lives through centuries of change. With a final glance at the moonlit columns, you feel your thoughts settle like the dust on the ancient stones. A peaceful reminder that every place holds stories, waiting patiently to be heard. The sound of water leads you next to the serene pyramid of Cestius, a surprising sight in the heart of Rome. This sleek, pointed structure rises sharply against the night sky, its smooth, white marble glowing faintly under the stars. It's a reminder that Rome's architecture was not limited to classic columns and arches. Sometimes it borrowed from far-off lands, adding an exotic touch to its skyline. Built as a tomb for Gaius Cestius, a wealthy magistrate, the pyramid stands out as one of the most unusual funerary monuments in the city. You imagine Cestius himself commissioning this bold statement to eternalize his name, perhaps hoping to inspire awe or maybe just make sure no one forgot him anytime soon. What's delightfully quirky is that the pyramid was constructed remarkably fast. Historians believe it took only about 330 days to complete, an impressive feat given the technology of the time. It's as if Rome decided, if we're going to have a pyramid, let's build it before next year's festival. Scholars still debate how much Egyptian culture truly influenced Roman society, or if monuments like this were more about showmanship and status than genuine cultural exchange. Nearby, you hear the faint rustle of leaves from the Protestant cemetery, where poets and diplomats now rest, creating a quiet contrast between ancient Rome's grandeur and the more recent whispers of history. As you gaze up at the pyramid's smooth sides, you imagine the many travelers over the centuries who have paused here, pondering its meaning under different skies and regimes. It's a perfect symbol of Rome's layers, where a tomb can be both a personal monument and a bridge between worlds. The quiet hum of the city feels miles away as you stand here, under the vast dome of stars, soaking in a moment of stillness that stretches gently like the marble shadows around you. You breathe in deeply, and the cool night air filling your lungs, and sense the calm that ancient stones carry, steady, eternal, and somehow comforting as you continue your soft journey through Rome's whispered stories. You continue your slow exploration, now finding yourself in the heart of the Subura, an ancient district famed for its lively streets and colorful characters. Though modern Rome has transformed much of this area in your mind's eye, you see narrow alleyways bustling with vendors, children playing games, and the steady hum of daily life. The Subura was a melting pot of social classes, from wealthy merchants to humble laborers, all packed into a small, vibrant neighborhood. It was known for its inns, taverns, and even temples, making it a hub of both commerce and culture. One amusing detail: the neighborhood was infamous for its noisy nightlife and festive atmosphere, leading some Romans to joke that the Subura never truly slept, a warning that perhaps still holds some truth today. Historians still argue about the real impact of the Subura on Roman society. Was it merely a chaotic slum, or a vital part of the city's energy and economy? Opinions vary, but its place in Rome's tapestry is undeniable. As you wander, you imagine the sense of freshly baked bread mingling with smoky fires and the occasional waft of fragrant perfumes. Street musicians might have played simple tunes, their melodies rising above the clamor, creating an impromptu soundtrack for everyday moments. You pause at the ruins of an ancient temple dedicated to the god Vulcan, protector of craftsmen and fire, a fitting landmark in such a lively district. The temple's cracked stones speak quietly of centuries past, reminding you how the sacred and the mundane often mingled in Rome's neighborhoods. Walking through these crowded lanes, you might overhear scraps of conversation, plans for a festival, gossip about local affairs, or debates over politics and gladiator matches. The Subura was a place where the pulse of the city beat strongest, and you can almost feel it beneath your feet. The night air here is thick with history and life, a comforting reminder that cities have always been complex, layered spaces where countless stories unfold simultaneously. You take a deep breath, letting the energy settle softly around you before drifting onward, carried gently by the city's timeless rhythms. Is Section 19. From the lively maze of the Subura, your journey brings you to the peaceful sanctuary of the gardens of Maecenas, a sprawling retreat that once belonged to one of Rome's most influential patrons of the arts. Here, the soft rustling of leaves and the gentle trickle of fountains create a calming soundtrack, contrasting beautifully with the city's usual clamor. Maecenas was known for his refined taste and love of poetry, turning these gardens into a cultural haven where poets, philosophers, and thinkers gather to share ideas and find inspiration. Imagine yourself reclining on a smooth marble bench, the scent of blooming roses and lavender filling the air as verses are softly spoken nearby. A curious detail is that these gardens were among the first in Rome to feature artificial waterfalls and terraces, showcasing a blend of nature and human artistry that was quite innovative for the time. It's like the ancient equivalent of a luxury spa day, but with more poetry and fewer smoothies. Historians still debate whether Maecenas' patronage significantly shaped Roman literature or if his influence was more about social status and political power. Either way, his gardens remain a testament to the city's softer, more contemplative side. You wander through shaded paths, noticing delicate frescoes hinting at mythological scenes and small statues tucked into the greenery, silent companions to centuries of quiet reflection. The air feels cooler here, carrying a soothing freshness that invites you to slow your pace even further. Nearby, the faint hum of bees adds to the ambience, reminding you of the garden's role in supporting local agriculture and ecology, a gentle harmony between human design and nature's rhythms. As you linger in this serene space, the world outside seems to soften and blur, leaving only the peaceful whispers of leaves and the steady pulse of history. It's a perfect place to rest your mind, letting the gentle charm of Maecenas' vision ease you deeper into your journey. You breathe in the fragrant air once more, feeling your thoughts unwind like the trailing vines along the garden walls, before you continue softly into the night. The faint glow of dawn leads you toward the vast Circus Maximus, once Rome's grandest arena, where crowds gather to watch thrilling chariot races and soak in the electrifying atmosphere. Tonight, the empty sprawl of the stadium feels tranquil, a gentle contrast to the roar it once held. You imagine yourself seated among tens of thousands, the dusty scent of the track mixing with the excitement in the air as charioteers prepare for their daring sprints. The wooden chariots, pulled by horses kicking up clouds of dirt, flash past in a blur, while the crowd's cheers rise and fall like waves. One quirky fact is that the Circus Maximus could reportedly hold up to 250,000 spectators, making it one of the largest stadiums ever built. That's a lot of people squeezed together, probably sharing snacks and complaining about the heat, much like modern sports fans. Historians still debate the actual size and capacity of the circus, as archaeological evidence is tricky and ancient sources often exaggerated. But there's no doubt it was a colossal stage for Roman entertainment and social spectacle. You picture vendors weaving through the crowd, selling spiced wine and dried figs, while others might have carried lucky charms or amulets, hoping for favor in the unpredictable races. Despite the adrenaline, there was also a sense of ritual and community. The circus was a place where citizens from all walks of life came together, united by the thrill of competition and the spectacle of speed. As you stroll along the outline of the ancient track, the shadows of long-gone horses seem to gallop faintly in the mist, and the distant echoes of cheers drift through the air. It's a comforting, almost hypnotic sensation, like the pulse of a city that never quite sleeps. You take a deep breath, let in the grand scale and quiet energy of the Circus Maximus settle into your thoughts before gently moving, carried softly through the slow cadence of Rome's history. Next, your wandering steps bring you to the quiet charm of the Aventine Hill, one of Rome's 7 hills, known less for its grandeur and more for its peaceful neighborhoods and lush gardens. The cool night breeze rustles through olive trees, and the scent of jasmine drifts faintly on the air, inviting you to slow your pace and breathe deeply. The Aventine has long been a retreat from the city's bustle, a place where Romans of various classes could find some calm. You picture ancient homes with small courtyards where families gathered for evening meals by oil lamps. The soft clinking of ceramic cups blend in with the distant sounds of the Tiber River. One quirky little detail: the Aventine was said to be the favorite spot for Rome's plebeians, or common folk, giving the hill a reputation as the People's Hill. It was also home to a secretive group called the Aventine secessionists, who staged a political protest by withdrawing from the city, an early example of passive resistance, if you will. Historians still argue about how much this peaceful neighborhood influenced Rome's political landscape, especially during times of unrest and reform. Was the Aventine simply a quiet suburb, or did it hold a deeper power in its quiet streets? You meander past the church of Santa Sabina, its ancient doors worn smooth by centuries of hands and history. Inside, you imagine soft candlelight flickering over the simple, elegant frescoes and the murmurs of quiet prayers. The air here feels thick with stories of lovers, poets, and common citizens who sought solace beneath the olive branches. The soft hoot of an owl echoes, and you pause to let the stillness wash over you. As you settle on a bench overlooking the city lights twinkling far below, the gentle hum of Rome feels like a lullaby, inviting you to rest your thoughts and drift gently forward. You inhale deeply, letting the peacefulness of the Aventine Hill seep into your bones. A calm island in the vast ocean of the ancient city's long story. From the gentle heights of the Aventine, you descend toward the Tiber's banks, where the ancient Pons Fabricius bridges past and present with quiet grace. This stone bridge, surprisingly well preserved, spans the river with simple arches, its surface worn smooth by the countless footsteps of Romans over 2 millennia. As you walk slowly across, you imagine the cool splash of river spray on your skin, mingling with the distant sounds of merchants unloading goods at the nearby docks. The bridge once connected the lively Jewish ghetto to the rest of the city, a place of exchange not just of goods, but of ideas and cultures. A charming bit of trivia. The Pons Fabricius is the oldest Roman bridge still in use today, a testament to the enduring engineering skills of its builders. It even sports an ancient inscription inviting passers-by to admire its craftsmanship, as if the Romans knew future tourists would come. Historians still debate whether the bridge's design was primarily practical or also symbolic, intended to signify unity between Rome's diverse communities. Below, you spot tiny fish darting in the clear river water, their movements barely disturbing the surface. The gentle flow of the Tiber feels like a heartbeat beneath your feet, steady and unending. Nearby, small temples dedicated to river gods remind you of how deeply intertwined religion and daily life were. Romans believed the gods controlled everything from the tides to the city's fortune. You pause mid-span, letting the quiet lapping of water soothe your thoughts, the cool night air carrying the faint scent of wet stone and earth. It's easy to imagine centuries of Romans crossing this very path. Soldiers, lovers, merchants, children, each step layering another story upon the last. With one last glance over the railing, you feel a deep sense of connection to those countless footsteps and soft river sounds before moving gently onward, carried by the soft cadence of Rome's unfolding tale. Your path leads you next to the baths of Caracalla, a sprawling complex that once served as a social hub where Romans relaxed, exercised, and mingled. Tonight, the vast ruins lie silent, shadows stretching across crumbled walls and empty pools, offering a quiet glimpse into a daily routine long gone. You picture yourself strolling through marble halls warmed by ancient hippocausts, the soft murmur of water echoing from the pools. The air might have smelled faintly of oils and herbs, mingled with the occasional waft of sweat from athletes training nearby. A fun fact, the baths covered around 33 acres and could accommodate up to 1,600 bathers at once. More like a Roman-sized wellness retreat than your neighborhood gym. Historians still argue whether these baths were primarily about hygiene, social status, or simply the Roman love of leisure and spectacle. Whatever the answer, they were central to urban life and culture. You imagine visitors pausing in the frigidarium, the cold room, to shock their bodies after a warm soak, or wandering to the palestra, the exercise yard, where wrestling and ball games brought friendly competition. Around you, the broken mosaics hint at intricate sea creatures and mythological scenes. The colors faded, but the artistry still whispering stories of luxury and escape. The baths were also places for quiet conversation and politics, a kind of ancient coffeehouse, but with steam and pools instead of lattes. You take a deep breath, feeling the cool night air mixing with the imagined warmth of the baths. a paradoxical comfort that soothes and invigorates simultaneously. As you move onward, the vast scale of the ruins reminds you of Rome's grandeur and the simple pleasures that shaped everyday lives across centuries. It's a gentle pause in your journey, inviting you to relax into the rhythm of history and the steady flow of ancient waters. Your slow wander now brings you to the lively heart of a Roman marketplace, the Forum Boarium, where traders once sold everything from fresh produce to exotic spices. Though the stalls are empty tonight, you can almost hear the murmur of haggling voices and the clatter of carts on cobblestones. Imagine the scent of ripe figs and olives mingling with the aroma of roasting meats from nearby food stalls, tempting passers-by with delicious smells. The air buzzes softly with the energy of daily commerce, a sensory patchwork of life and livelihood. A quirky detail: the Forum Boreum was also home to Rome's oldest temples, dedicated to Hercules and Portunus, gods associated with cattle and harbors. These ancient shrines add a sacred layer to what was otherwise a bustling commercial district. Historians still debate how much influence the Forum Boreum's commerce had on Rome's economy, whether it was just a local market or a critical hub for goods coming into the city. You picture merchants shouting prices, buyers inspecting goods closely, and street performers entertaining the crowd with music and acrobatics, a daily theater of sights and sounds that made the market a social highlight. Nearby, the Tiber's waters sparkle faintly, reflecting lantern light and casting ripples that dance softly along the riverbank. You pause by a worn stone statue of Hercules, imagining the mix of reverence and pragmatism felt by Romans who sought divine protection for their livelihood. The evening air feels cool and inviting, carrying the gentle hum of a city that thrives on exchange, not just of goods, but of stories, smiles, and quiet human connection. As you leave the market behind, the steady pulse of commerce fades into a calm whisper, a reminder that even in bustling places, there's a rhythm that can lull you into peaceful reverie. You breathe deeply, savoring the lingering aromas and gentle noises as you step softly into the next chapter of Rome's enduring tale. Your final footsteps lead you to the tranquil Janiculum Hill, away from the city's ancient hustle, where the soft glow of moonlight bathes the panoramic view of Rome's rooftops and distant domes. The cool night air carries the faint rustle of leaves and the occasional chirp of crickets, a natural lullaby for the city below. Here, the whispers of history feel intimate, as if the hill itself holds the secrets of generations who sought refuge and reflection in its gentle embrace. You imagine poets and revolutionaries alike drawing inspiration from this quiet vantage point, their thoughts as expansive as the vista before them. A charming tidbit: Janiculum was not originally counted among Rome's legendary seven hills, yet it became a favored spot for relaxation and celebration, often overlooked but quietly essential. Historians still argue whether Janiculum's role was primarily strategic, as a defensive lookout, or if its cultural significance shaped Rome's identity in subtler ways. You sit on a smooth stone bench, feeling the cool marble beneath your fingertips, and let your gaze drift over the softly illuminated cityscape. The twinkling lights resemble stars fallen to earth, scattered like a gentle promise of dreams to come. In this peaceful moment, you reflect on the layered history you've traveled through, the bustling markets, the grand arenas, the quiet gardens, and the sacred temples, all woven into the fabric of this timeless city. The air hums softly with the pulse of life, ancient and enduring, inviting you to rest, to breathe, and to let the soothing cadence of Rome's story guide you toward a gentle sleep. You close your eyes briefly, the soft breeze carrying the faint scent of rosemary and earth, a final embrace from a city that never truly fades. With your thoughts quieted and your spirit eased, you prepare to drift off, carried gently by the soft rhythm of history's lullaby.